Welcome to the Pigskin Party Podcast, the only podcast that combines real NFL analysis with a splash of pop culture and a dash of the random. Let's get this Pigskin Party started with your hosts, Brian McFadden and Will Southard.
Welcome to the PPP. My name is Brian. You are listening to the main NFL episode. Make sure to stay tuned for the Flavor of the Week episode. The reason I said main is because we are making a slight alteration to the format. We will still have the NFL episode that you're listening to now dropping on Wednesday and the Flavor of the Week episode dropping on Friday, but we're going all NFL, baby. Our Flavor of the Week will now be a random NFL topic. We're still going to have the palate cleanser. We know how much you guys like that, but we just, main topics, there's so much NFL to talk about that we're just going to do that in every single episode that we do. So please subscribe wherever you're listening to this. We really appreciate all the fans. We're in like 27 countries. We have every continent except South America. So if you know anybody from South America, please have them listen to the Pigskin Party. Tell your friends, rate, review. That's how we grow this Pigskin Party. Joining me as always to break down all the NFL news, now back in his normal place after yet another visit to a murdery hotel room, Will Southard. How you doing, dude?
What up, buddy? I'm gonna miss like the what do we do like? What, free Britney? I'm gonna miss those kind of discussions.
they're in it. The Kanye's.
It's like you tune in for NFL news, and we're gonna talk about Kanye being a rap Jesus. But it's good, man.
Knowing us, random stuff will still come up.
It'll creep in. I'll probably use it as an analogy from time to time, and it won't be very good. But that's what I'll do. I bought a car this weekend. It's been good. Yeah, man.
Brand new, used. What's the deal?
New one. New 15 miles on it. It's I just was driving around my little pea shooter for too long. That was my wife's leftovers, and I was like, I got
sloppy seconds. Oh, sorry. That's a Will comment. I'm being the Will right
listen, you don't tell me or us how to live our life, okay, Brian?
Fair enough.
But anyway, yeah, man, I got a new car. It's been a good week. It's a good week. I'm tired from work, but it's a good week.
Are you going to tell us what kind of car it is? You're going to give us a little...
I'll give you a hint.
Is it like a minivan? Like now they got two kids?
No, it's an SUV.
Okay.
And the tagline is, I am immortal. Think about it.
Highlander?
It is. It is.
Oh, look at that.
A new one. Platinum Highlander. It's got all that. I mean, it's not... It's like a really fancy SUV for like dads who have given up on their dreams. You know what I mean?
Well,
like
that describes you perfectly. So
it's not like it's not a Beamer or like a Porsche or a Tesla. It's nice. It's good for me.
As someone who's currently watching the show Outlander, I'm all into the Scottish Highlands right now, so I approve of you driving in a Highlander SUV. So let's go ahead and bring in our guest for the week. The first guest, DJ Kraus. Did I pronounce your name right? I'm sorry if I butchered it.
You did pronounce it.
Nice. DJ Kraus is
like DJ or like wicka.
Like that's what my parents have called me since I was born.
It. So
but
you don't
he could
have
also be a DJ
skills.
for all we know.
Yeah, I'm not. I am in a band, but
got it.
Nice. Well, Will and I met in a band 20 years ago. That's depressing, but yeah, so we can relate. So how you doing, DJ?
My dad, I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, my dad said he wanted to name me after a New York Yankee, but my mom wouldn't let him. So calling me DJ was like calling me Derek Jeter without being able to name me that.
So we're just going to refer to you as Jeter for the rest of the podcast. I hope that's okay with you.
You have a lot more hair.
That he does. And less baseball Hall of Fame
and less money, probably. I don't know you, but I'm going to guess less money.
So there was a New York tease in there. So DJ is our Giants fan. So obviously we're going to continue the team deep dive. We are going to dive deep into the New York Football Giants, and DJ is our Giants fan to come on and join us. We got another guest back for a second stint. I think I felt bad because last week Neil Thrillkill was on, co-host of the Two Tight Ends podcast, and his time just got monopolied by Tim Tebow discussions in both episodes of the podcast.
That wasn't my fault. I was right, to be fair.
So Neil had to bring you back. Thank you so much for coming back. Just 1 week later, we promised to give you more mic time. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to be back. Hey, I was just glad to be a part of that episode. That was an awesome episode. Great discussion. But yeah, maybe we'll talk a little more football this time.
Yes, that was certainly a double episode of epicness, having you and both Lindsay Bebo on from Broncos Brawl. So before we jump into the Giants deep dive, there is a lot of news that I was literally, once again, with like 30 minutes to go before we start recording, I'm getting all sorts of notifications of stuff popping. So we do have some news. The big news of the day, though, we have to jump in first. And perfect that we have 2 of the 4 NFC East teams represented here, because the big news of the day is that Dak finally got paid. That's right. Dak Prescott signed a new deal with Dallas. He was not franchise tagged. It's a 6-year deal, but it voids into 4 because that's how you make fake contracts to save money on the cap these days. So it's essentially a 4-year deal worth as much as $164 million. If you're doing the math at home, that's just over $40 million per year. I think that's exactly the number we were talking about last week, Will and Neil. It's $126 million guaranteed. And Dak also beats Russell. They always have to one-up each other, right? Dak beats Russell Wilson's previous record for signing bonus with $66 million, whereas Russ got $65 million. So I'm going to start with you, Neil, since we had you on last week, specifically breaking down the top 5 free agent quarterbacks, and Dak was, of course, the one we highlighted the most. What are your thoughts on this deal by Dallas and Dak?
I think it was almost inevitable for both parties. I mean, could you imagine Dak just walking away from them or them franchising tag? I couldn't see it happening. I mean, that's what Dak was asking. He got what he wanted, right? He was asking for right that number. It's kind of not insane. Insane is a little harsh, but it's pretty crazy he got that big of a number, to be honest, especially coming off an injury. But, I mean, he showed he should be the leader in Dallas. So, yeah, I'm surprised. And like you said, he did one up Russell Wilson with the $66 million. Do you think, like, their agents like have right when somebody has the record for signing bonus or something, they write that down and they're like, okay, I know what I got to go get next time?
Oh yeah, either the agents or the players themselves, like they have to. Obviously, he wasn't going to beat total money because that was nobody's going to beat Mahomes with like $500 million, right? So that's a threshold they're not going to cross. But what can they do? And this, I get a feeling this was more the agent than Dak. Like, what can they do to say that I got my client the highest signing bonus in the history of the NFL? So, yeah, I think you're right, Neil. I think from the start of the negotiations, they had 65 underlined.
That number, yeah.
And then they're like, we can talk about the guaranteed money, but just give us that $66 million signing bonus. DJ, what are your thoughts on this as a Giants fan?
I think, like, coming from the perspective of being a Giants fan, I'm okay with this. It's them keeping a position that, while important, they don't really have a team around him that can do much, as they showed this year. Like, Dak hasn't played as well against the Giants as some other Cowboys quarterbacks in the past, so I'm okay with it. I think they would have been better if they decided to maybe draft a quarterback in the next couple years and try and build a team around them, rather than now Dak is taking up so much of their cap, and they're going to have to try and build around him with less cap than they've been building around him with for the past 4 years.
You say that. So one of the things that this contract does is, lest we forget how much the Cowboys paid for Amari Cooper and Zeke Elliott. So Amari Cooper, five years, $100 million deal, $60 million guaranteed, $20 million a year. Zeke Elliott, 6 years, $90 million deal, $50 million guaranteed, $15 million a year. You know, that kind of locked them into this sort of deal. You know, like they couldn't have underpaid Dak and overpaying these two guys and get really good production out of their offense. You know, so I think having Dak sort of set the bar for that team was one of the things that the Cowboys wanted to do going in. It's a hell of a lot of money, but so is the contracts for Zeke and Amari, like you said, DJ. But that's kind of that's the thing. You have to. He is that franchise, for better or for worse. You can't really draft a quarterback and be guaranteed that sort of production where they're at. And he has good chemistry with these guys. You know, the other thing is, it's just coming off the injury. Like, good for him. Good for the Cowboys to give him this kind of money coming off that kind of injury. Because who knows what kind of Dak we're going to get going forward. But whatever
Well, I
kind of
wonder-
Dak we're going to get, it's going to be $126 million worth.
I wonder if the injury and the fact that that team just absolutely fell down once he was out of the lineup, I wonder if that in some way contributes to this kind of a contract, right? Because he showed just how valuable he was to the success of the Cowboys. And they had other issues, offensive line injuries, and their defense was bad, sure. But they just
that
had a
was,
dreadful season.
I think it was
as
a
soon as he
blessing
comes
in
out.
disguise, almost.
Yeah,
For
almost
Dak
a
at
little
least
bit.
getting his money.
For Dak, correct.
Yeah.
So because that's what you try to do in these contract years is you want to show just how much you mean to that franchise, and maybe it took him, breaking his ankle to see like, wow, look how bad you were without me.
I'll tell you
might
right
as well
now,
pay me.
you can baseball bat my knee for $126 million anytime. Both
Guaranteed.
Both of them. Just right on the
Well-
kneecap.
Will's like, let's just do it. Just
Yeah.
Let's
Sign
do
me
it.
up.
I'll
I'll
buy
probably take a
something.
discount, like pay me $50 million, $25 million a knee. We don't have to make it 126.
Exactly.
But yeah,
I think DJ actually brings up kind of a good point. Well, leading into a point that I want to make is I think it's the biggest conundrum in the NFL is, yes, you're trying to get paid, and the quarterbacks always get paid the most. But it's like at one point, do you pay these guys, and then you have no room for anybody else? And that's kind of what the whole success story of Tom Brady in New England at least is he would always take that pay cut, and then they could build around him, hopefully, right? But it's a weird balancing act for these teams.
and they have multiple holes, right? Dallas isn't a team that is like one player away from contending clearly. So they've got their offensive line is not the stalwart offensive line it used to be. Their defense certainly has problems across the board. They weren't great on the pass rush. They couldn't really stop the pass or the run, to be honest. And Zeke was not the Zeke we knew. I mean, so how much more room are they going to have to bring on players to help them actually compete?
They better
I
have
still
a good
think
draft.
right.
Well, and then also this deal lowered the cap hit from Prescott being franchise tagged by about $15 million.
I did see that.
Yeah.
Right.
So-
It made the cap hit this year at least. Who knows how they structured it for the next 4 years? But this year, his cap hit's only going to be $22 million, whereas it would have been about $37 million if they would have tagged him. So they better spend that money while they can.
got about they should have about 40 million in cap space. At least they're not the Saints, bro. The Saints
they're
have
like
two
negative
rosters
80.
two rosters worth of money on one team.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Well,
that's a thing that they're gonna have to figure out.
It's crazy how Ben Roethlisberger's contract, they restructured it from 19 to 14 and saved $15 million in the cap. Like just the $4 million change. Like, all right.
They hire guys that's all they do is they
Yeah.
understand how to manipulate contracts and the salary cap. Plebes like us do not understand because 15.5 that math doesn't
I
make
know.
sense.
I don't understand it, but somehow.
But these agents and the people, personnel people, Howie Roseman he started off as he's like an attorney, he's like a salary cap person. Not that he's done a great job doing that in Philly, but that was his background. Was that he was really good with numbers and salary and understanding those kind of things. I think that, I mean, we talked about this last week. I believe they would get a deal done. I did not think they would tag him. And I think, Will, you said 3 years. Like, you don't have to do 6. That's exactly what they did. They did 4 years. They didn't try to lock him into 7 or 8. Is it a lot of money? Sure. Is it going to hamstring the Cowboys in a team-building effort? Absolutely. But what other alternative did they have? You take
suck?
a rookie just to suck? Yeah. I don't think Jerry. That doesn't sit well with Jerry.
Yeah, Jerry's
Jerry's running on like fumes, bro. Like Jerry's on borrowed time. Like he wants to win. He's not worried about what's his kid's name, Steven, whatever the Jones.
Steven Jones. Yeah.
Yeah. Not worried about him. Jerry wants to get one more. I'm pretty sure if the Cowboys scored the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl, Jerry would just be like, "I had a good run," and just fall over
I'm
his
out.
chair. He's just dead.
They have a
He's
coffin
dead.
ready for him.
As soon as they
It's a
they
Super
give him
Bowl
the Lombardi.
coffin.
They give him the Lombardi, and he wants to crush under the weight of it. Like the Lombardi trophy is what
They
kills
stick
him.
it in his coffin and turn it like a key to Indiana Jones, and that like seals it forever.
They bury him with the Lombardi, like
That's it.
like
Ah,
the Pharaoh.
jeez. Yeah.
That's actually in Dak's contract. He has to get in the casket with Jerry.
I don't think he should have signed if that was the case. I will a couple more things. There is and this is the new thing with these quarterbacks, right? There's a no trade clause and a no tag clause. So once his 6/4 year deal is up in 4 years, they cannot tag him and they can't trade him while his contract is valid. So good for Dak. Good for you getting paid.
I think that's huge, and like you said, it's kind of a trend. A lot of these quarterbacks are getting that now, and I think it's a good trend to have that. A lot of the power is sort of shifting, more power is shifting towards the players. Like
Well, you see
that,
Deshaun and Russ.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly what they have going on.
You
I
see
kinda
it a
feel
lot
like-
more in the NBA, but yeah, go
Right.
ahead. Will.
I kind of feel like they should just exempt the quarterback position from the salary from counting against the cap. Like, how fun would that be? No, I mean, really, like
Crazy.
when you think about
be insane.
teams, there's not that many quarterbacks, right? All of them are kind of locked up to their team that they're on. You know, I mean,
Well-
how fun would that be? You know, like, all right, you got-
Lately, we're not seeing that, though. Lately, we're seeing that teams are not as locked in. We still could see Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson dealt,
yeah, but
which is just an
that's-
insane thought.
That's not Deshaun's fault.
I didn't say it was his fault, but I'm saying you say, oh, it'd be nice to see all these quarterbacks locked in. I think it's kind of exciting to see these quarterbacks, this frenzy going on, right?
I mean, I don't know. I just the thought of a Bears Russell
even-
Wilson is just gonna make me cry.
Even already this offseason with like Matt Stafford, who was with the Lions for 11 years and seemed like a sure thing for the rest of his career there, is gone now because he wanted to be. And then the Rams looked pretty locked into Jared Goff until they weren't.
Yeah, I mean, think about between Wentz, Goff, and Stafford, you've got 2 number 1 overall picks and a number 2 overall pick, all still young enough to compete for many years left. Stafford's not young, but he's not old. He's still got a lot of time left. All essentially in the middle of their careers or early in their careers, switched teams in the past like less than 30 days, and there's probably still some left. That's crazy.
We should do it.
What's the stat of like no quarterback since 2009 is on the team in the first round?
Same
Is
team.
on the team that drafted them
And
anymore.
that's because the Matthew Stafford was the last one to fall.
I feel like
That's the modern NFL.
I feel like this that all the teams should have to like put up their quarterbacks in a Hunger Games scenario, and like the loser has to go to like the winning Super Bowl
Houston
team.
or Philly. I mean, those are the So let's move on. There was one more trade or one more big move. It was a trade that was announced. The terms are just starting to come out, but the Tennessee Titans have traded last year's first-round pick, offensive
away.
tackle Isaiah, gave him away. Right, we say trade, but when we talk about the terms, barely terms at all. Essentially gave away offensive tackle Isaiah Wilson out of Georgia to the Miami Dolphins. The terms, which I believe Will and Neil informed me of, because last I checked, there were no terms, was that, and DJ mentioned it as well, a 2022 7th swapped for a 2021 7th. That's 7, not second, 7th round pick for a guy just a year ago who was, the 29th overall pick? As a Dolphins fan, I mean, this is like a no-brainer. Like
It's house money, bro.
Yeah.
House money.
His salary is he's going to cost like less than $5 million this year. If he doesn't work out, who cares?
Yeah.
What we lost? What, a 7th round pick? We swapped one. Come on.
In what
so
world can you be
Crazy.
a shite bag? Like, no one wants this guy. You make $5 million. I mean, good lord. Like, I could put in more effort for that. $5 million.
I thought the Josh
Probably
Rosen
play
thing
more
was
snaps.
similar. When we threw a second rounder at the end, like the end of the second round for Josh Rosen, who was 1 year away off of getting selected 10th overall, I thought that was a steal. That's nothing compared to this. We literally got the guy for free. So I'm not going to comment anymore. So I want to hear from you guys on
Well,
this.
you hit the nail on the head. If it's a free trial, pretty much. You can see if maybe he can get his act together because he had some trouble over in Tennessee, and then if he is an actual first round talent, and if not, who cares? He still.
I mean, if there's anywhere place that you can go to not get in trouble, it's in Miami, Florida, for sure.
Yeah, but you're also going to play for a head coach and a GM who have shown that they don't mind cutting star players if they don't fit with it's the Belichick way.
If you didn't want him to get in trouble, send him to Seattle. Like, what's there to do in Seattle other than like
or Cleveland.
Be sad and like eat a lot.
Seattle
No,
is
Cleveland's fun. What are you talking about?
Seattle is it's a fun city. I haven't been, but I have friends who live there. And
We should have a new segment
would
that's
throw
called
Seattle
"The
in.
Worst City of All 32 NFL Teams" and see what. It's probably Jacksonville. If we're
oh,
gonna
you
be
know
honest.
what? You're absolutely right. It is definitely Jacksonville.
We're gonna get some hate from our listeners from that.
We are. I don't know that we have a lot of. I don't know we have a lot of Jaguars listeners.
That's because there aren't a lot of Jaguars fans.
Exactly. So
they're
think
all
if
in
we're-
England.
If we're safe to trash a team, it's Jacksonville. DJ, any thoughts on the Titans trading Wilson to the Dolphins?
I mean, the Wilson trade was inevitable. Like, the Titans were going to trade him. I think this is probably lower compensation than most people would have assumed. It's a very savvy move by the Dolphins. Like, they needed offensive line, and now they potentially have some. They have to have a few first-round picks on that line right now. 'Cause
Austin Jackson.
is Eric Flowers still over
He
there?
is. Yeah. I don't know if he's going to start. He might not
Former-
be a starter next year. He was in and out of the lineup this
Yeah.
year. They have a second-round guard in Robert Hunt. They have a first-round tackle in Austin Jackson. So they've got some youth on that line.
And that's the most important position in the NFL, in my opinion.
Well, we saw that in the Super Bowl.
I know this is not what we're talking about, but I think it's pretty firm now. I've consistently seen Jamar Chase mocked to the Dolphins at number 3. So
I've seen either him or Smith. It's one or the other.
I think
and honestly,
we need
I'm fine
who's
with
our
either.
article guy? Who's the guy that writes all the articles?
Ross Crawford.
You need to tell Ross to write up a profile between Devonta Smith and Jamar Chase. That would
Okay,
be
that's a good idea. That's a good idea. He's doing the quarterbacks right now. He just did Justin Fields. I'll release that probably tomorrow. But yeah, that's good. We'll definitely have him do that. He's going to do a mock draft for us too. We're going to have a mock draft special. Here's a teaser in a couple weeks. We're going to have a mock draft special. So Will, I'm telling you now, I haven't told you yet. Be prepared to do a live mock draft. Well, not live, but we're going to do a mock draft on the show in 2 weeks. So let's move on. I don't know that we need to say anything else about the Dolphins. Clearly won this. Even if he's a troublemaker, I mean, it's only slightly worse than just getting him off the free. In fact, free agency, he might have cost more.
He's going to go straight Antonio Brown, bro. He's going to go straight Antonio Brown.
That's fine. He can flame out. It really didn't cost us anything. So we swapped a 7th round pick. Big whoop. So here's some interesting news. So when the collective bargaining agreement was signed before the start of last season, one of the things, of course, we saw the expanded playoffs. That took place this past season. But the other thing that was interesting is the NFL at some point will be moving to a 17-game regular season. So this is actually happening. It may not happen in 2021. There's a possibility it could get pushed to the future, but it will happen. So how that works is they're going to reduce the preseason from 4 games to 3 games, which is the least they can do. They could drop another preseason game, and I'd be perfectly fine with that. The plan would be so the 17th game would be an interconference matchup based on divisional standings from the previous campaign. So essentially now you play a division in your own conference and a division in the other conference, and you're matched up based on the record. Or, the interconference, you're matched up based on the record. So let's say you finish first in the AFC East, you're going to play the first place teams in the other divisions in your conference. Well, this would be like that, except a single division in the other conference, and it would rotate every year. So let's say the Dolphins finished second place in the AFC East. They would play the second place team in the NFC East next season, or whatever they get matched up. That would be the 17th game. So, Will, I'll start with you on this. What do you think this is like just whatever, more NFL? Do you have an opinion on the 17-game regular season?
Well, here's the thing, right? Like, usually by the end of the year, most teams have locked up a playoff spot, right? And you're just kind of like whatevering your squad going in. Not always, you could be fighting for your life also. So I think in that regard, it's kind of interesting, right? You get 2 teams potentially that could be both fighting for their life. 2 different conferences could make for some more interesting playoff matches to get handed L's, going in. But then some of them won't matter. But that's what I mean. I think a 17 game season is better. Like, the more football we can get, the better. I always thought 4 preseason games was excessive. I know that the NFL really likes players like preseason games because it's just more practice.
I don't know about that. A lot of this coaches look at McVay. He just sits all his starters every single game.
Well, correct.
So,
I mean, I don't mean
it's good. It's good for the younger players who are trying to make a roster. That's really
correct. I don't mean that they like preseason games. What I mean, more playing is worse for players. Players would prefer to play 4 games and then play the Super Bowl.
That's true.
I just mean that the extra reps are good. So I don't know. I mean, I'm all for this kind of deal. I think along with this, there's some rule changes that I'd really like to see, and maybe we'll do that in a different segment that I think really affect the game in a bad way. But I'm all for it.
So I completely agree. I want to do a segment on the rule changes. I wanted to kind of see what rules got approved or what didn't. But maybe we can do the flavor of the week next week because there are some interesting rule proposals out there by teams. DJ,
overtime
any
rule?
thought? Yeah, specific overtime rule. There's multiple overtime rules out there. DJ, what are your thoughts on the NFL moving to a 17-game regular season?
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense with how they're going. You know, they added an extra playoff game this past year in each conference. And so, like, it makes sense. They want more games. And honestly, I think this year showed that there doesn't need to be a preseason because there wasn't one this year and everything was fine. So I think they could cut out the entire preseason and have 17 games or even 18 games. And I think players would prefer that rather than having 4 meaningless games.
And it's clearly a revenue move by the NFL. Let's call it what it is, right? They're not making the same revenue in a preseason game that they are in a full-scale regular season game. Neil, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you guys, I agree with your point so far. I just think on the player side, I don't think they're going to be very happy about it. I mean, Will kind of touched on it. They would rather play 4 games than the Super Bowl. I think the players were pretty against this as far as I know. So it's just another game to beat up your body before you got to get into the playoffs, especially late in the season. But yeah, it's a revenue push. I mean, for the fans, I think it's awesome. And let's hope we get some more, last week of the NFL. We have some, some matchups that comes down to the wire. Who's getting in the playoffs and stuff.
My worry is that, because I'll take all the NFL I can get, right? My worry is that these games are going to be, week 17 in general, unless you're fighting for a spot, you're just sitting everybody anyway. Yeah. So could this be the last 2 weeks where players are just sitting? And are we going to get actual good football? Because if we don't, it's not necessarily worth the price of admission.
Yeah, because if you just replace a preseason game with a game that everybody's sitting anyways. Correct. Yeah, that's boring.
Right. It means something at least, but it's not necessarily good football to watch. Mm-hmm. So we're recording this on Monday night, but it'll drop on Wednesday. The deadline for franchise tags is supposed to be Tuesday, March 9th. So if you're listening to this, that would have already passed. But there's been talk of moving it back because typically by this point, the NFL has announced what the official salary cap number will be. But as we're sitting right now, it still hasn't been announced. Tomorrow's the deadline for teams to tag players. We've only seen a handful of tags. Usually you see like 10 to 12 at this point. I think we've seen, 3? Like Justin Simmons, Marcus May was tagged in New York today, and I think there was one other one, Moton
Washington
from Carolina.
Guy. The Washington
Scherf.
Guy.
You just said that. So Brandon Scherf. So, but you're talking about 4. And there's a lot of high-profile players out there.
One point that I did not make, and I think we should make this before we move on, and I totally forget it. To flash back real quick to the Isaiah Wilson trade. Remember how we talked about the Rams not giving a crap about first-round picks and using them as currency? What a good example of why that's a good plan, right? Like
that's true.
Like this was a first-round pick. Like that's what you use to that's your currency in the NFL, and it was complete garbage. Like if you want a really good example of why the NFL I think overvalues picks, that he's a really good reason of why. Like think how valuable that pick would have been in a trade scenario, Well,
think about the quarterbacks we talked about. DJ mentioned for 2009, none of them are on their teams anymore. Like how it's such a crapshoot. Even these slam dunk prospects, you really don't know, except in a handful of occurrences, just if they'll be successful or not and worth it. So I think this is a make or break year for the Rams. We're going to see if their philosophy pays off. So, but I'm with you, Will.
What? Yeah, I think in terms of the salary cap, what we're talking about now, the higher the number, the better, man. Like I like these teams to stay together. There's certainly enough money in the NFL to pay it, and also with the deals that these guys are getting, the higher number is going to I think lock teams into having to make some really big decisions. Like when you have smaller salary cap numbers, you kind of just can't. Your contracts are more even. Obviously they're not. You get $500 million with Mahomes, but generally, if it's smaller, they have to be more even because you have a certain number of players, right? As you get more money, you can proportionally pay your better people more, right? And it gives incentive for guys to do better, I think, to really get those big money deals.
Well, that works. Teams absolutely want higher salary caps. This is not a teams thing. There is a deal with the NFL that the salary cap is based on a proportion of revenue, and revenue was down in 2020 because of COVID. So it's widely expected that the salary cap, which has been rising for years and years, will actually go down. And so that's why we have seen a lot of these teams not franchise tagging yet.
Negotiate that. Yeah,
but that's what they're doing now. That's exactly what they're doing now, which is why they haven't announced it. So the NFLPA and the NFL are trying to say, hey, let's come to a salary cap number we can all agree on. We have to keep in mind that the NFL lost revenue. They still made billions, but they lost revenue technically. But that's why you've seen these teams not making moves because they don't know what they have to spend. They don't want to franchise tag a guy if they find out the salary cap's only going to be $180 million, which is the floor. It can't be less than that. But they just don't know what kind of wiggle room they have. So you haven't seen a lot of contracts, Dak being the exception. You haven't seen a lot of tags. There's talk that it could get moved. That was the other point I wanted to make, is that the actual date for the franchise tag deadline could be moved. So you could be listening to this on Wednesday, and they might have moved the deadline back a couple of days. They actually did that last year as well. So I want to use that to segue into our discussion tonight on last week we did the top 5 free agent quarterbacks. Tonight I want to do the top 5 non-quarterback free agents. So we're not talking about quarterbacks. Obviously, we gave Dak plenty of time, and we gave the quarterbacks time last week. So what I did is I took this order off of NFL.com. Greg Rosenthal writes a column every year, top 101 free agents. So I took this list of 5, took the people out who had already been franchise tagged, like Justin Simmons was up there, and I took the quarterbacks out. When I made this list, it was actually before Dak got signed. So we're going to start with Neil because Trent Williams is the top-rated, according to NFL.com, the top-rated non-quarterback offensive line or player of any type. He is an offensive tackle. Used to be in Washington. Spent this past year in San Francisco. He's going to get paid. So, any speculation on Trent Williams' future?
I'm not too sure. I think you're absolutely right. He's going to get paid. He's a left tackle. He is honestly, and maybe I'm a little biased, but I saw him like every week playing. He's honestly one the most athletic tackle I've ever seen. I'm younger though, maybe there's a few I haven't seen, but he's a monster. I'm really sad that he left. That was a whole situation with the
Washington screwed him.
Yeah,
badly,
big time. And Ron Rivera tried to come in and try to mend it, but it was already foregone. So, man, he's gonna get paid. Like, there's a lot of teams that need to protect a lot of money, a lot of assets right there in the QB position. So, I'm not exactly sure, to be honest, off the top of my head. But yeah, he's gonna get paid.
I don't know why, if you're a college lineman, you don't just say to yourself, you know what I'm gonna learn how to do? Play left tackle. You know what I mean? And that blindside stuff. Like, that's all I would do if I was in college and I was that big. And athletic, I guess, would be to learn how to play left tackle.
Well, it's not just a technique thing, though. There are, what the NFL in particular, they'll look for not just are you big, because all these offensive linemen are big, but you have to have a certain arm length.
Obviously.
You have to have a certain build to you to be able to play left tackle. So there's big, bulky centers. Brandon Scherf does not have the body type to play left tackle, and he's an Pro Bowl, All-Pro guard.
Right, those edge rushers are so skilled these days. They can come out and bull rush you, give you a spin, like run past you. You have to have it all. while still
Yeah.
being huge.
The athleticism, the strength, and you got to have the wingspan to be able to keep them at bay and not let them get their arms on you. DJ, any thoughts on Trent Williams?
Yeah, I was very happy when Washington traded him last year.
Can't imagine why.
I think something else, just talking about like left tackles in general, and the question you brought up is the mentality. Like, it's the most demanding job for a lineman mentally. And this is like, I played left tackle in high school. So that's not like big anything, but that's like, it is like the most demanding. And if you mess up, you're getting yelled at the hardest by the coach. Like, you have to be in it mentally. And if you're not, then you're not a good left tackle and you're not going to play well.
Do we think he might be back on San Francisco, or is he's going to go get paid somewhere else?
I don't know. That's interesting because I mean, there's so many rumors about their quarterback situation. You know,
Yeah.
that's what I'm worried about.
And Jimmy G, yet he's I think about $25 million hit on their cap, but none of it is dead money. They can cut him, they can trade him, and it won't cost them anything. The way they've structured his contract, all his guaranteed money is in the past. So they have one of the most flexible quarterback situations as far as their incumbent starter and how easy it is to get rid of him.
That's true. And then did Kittle re-sign last season? He extended?
He extended.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, if they were to sign Trent Williams, most of your money on the offensive side is going to that left tackle and then a tight end. So,
yeah, and you've got young playmakers, Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel.
Yeah.
You've got guys on rookie contracts there.
it would be a good fit for them. Yeah.
And it is so worth spending good money on just a nice tight end.
Well, and like I said, like they are
or two tight ends.
Or two. You know what I'd do if I had
plug for Neil's podcast.
If I had $1 million, two tight ends at the same time, man.
60% of the time is two tight ends every time.
I love it. But no, when I was talking about his athleticism, I mean, he fits that system perfectly because they love doing those jet sweeps, those getting out in space, and he can get out and move right along with those wide receivers and those running backs. So it would be a good fit for him.
Yeah. I wonder if a team like the Jets, who have offensive needs and have, or Jacksonville, and have the cap space to sign a huge contract that maybe San Francisco can't match. So I'm curious to see.
With that young QB in there, yeah.
Right, exactly. So you're going to get Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. In New York, you're going to have a young QB. Either they keep Darnold or they build around him or they trade him and draft a rookie. You're going to want a stud left tackle and not a prospect left tackle. Like you plug Trent Williams in, you don't have to worry about him as long as he stays healthy.
I would love them to plug in Trump at left tackle.
Trump Williams.
And see what happens.
We cannot avoid politics.
I'm the best left tackle. There's none better. I'm the best.
I'm the best.
I thought you were the sack. I thought you were the sack getter. Will.
I'm all the best. I make the best blocks. Nobody makes blocks better than me.
Well, he's got the small hands, so he wouldn't be a good left. Okay, moving on. The next non-quarterback free agent on the list is wide receiver Allen Robinson. So here's a guy who has literally never played for a good quarterback and still manages to be a stud number one.
He needs
wide
to hang
receiver.
on. He needs to hang on for Russ. It's like, come on, Russ.
That's interesting. If you are Chicago, and there's been reports that they are actually gearing up to make a huge offer for Russell Wilson, that's the kind of thing. Maybe the only thing I think they can salvage Allen Robinson is either the franchise tag or you bring in a quarterback like Deshaun or Russ that Robinson would want to stay and play for. Because Robinson actually tried to renegotiate last season, and they didn't even give him the time of day. And being the player that he is, he didn't hold out. He went back and he kept playing. But that was pretty disrespectful. When you don't exactly have a lot of wide receiver weapons in Chicago, or weapons of any kind on the offensive side of the ball, to not even entertain extending him last season, I think they need to bring in a stud quarterback or tag him, or Robinson's going elsewhere.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I want to shout out your Chris Collinsworth impression there. Now, here's a guy
I
was
listen to I listen to way too much football.
But I think yeah, he's going to be the number one prospect, wide receiver prospect if they don't get tagged. I think a lot of people are chomping at the bits waiting for him. Is he getting tagged or not? I saw a stat today on Twitter. There have been what was it? It was there have been like 3 seasons in the last couple years, or 3 guys in the last couple years who have won drop seasons, and that was last year's Robinson and Hopkins, and then 2 years ago it was Brown. So only those three wide receivers have done that.
Yep, that shows you the quality wide receiver that he is.
Mm-hmm.
DJ, any thoughts on Allen Robinson?
So I'm actually a student at Penn State right now, Allen Robinson's alma mater, and I love Allen Robinson. He was great here, went on to be great in the NFL so far. We'll get into the Giants more later when I'm talking about him more, but he's the guy I want. He's the free agent I want.
And the Giants just cut Golden Tate, so they have a clear need. Making some moves. They have a clear need, get some weapons for Danny Dimes. Yeah, we're gonna deep dive in the Giants, so I won't go down that hole anymore. But let's talk about one Giant. Or at least last season, defensive tackle Leonard Williams is the third non-quarterback free agent on this list. Started his career with one New York team with the Jets, and then really revived it last year with New York. He was a monster on the interior of that line. They did tag him last year. DJ, I'll start with you on this one. Do you think that New York will tag him again, that Gettleman will throw the tag on? Do you think they'll sign him, or do you think he'll go elsewhere?
So that's an interesting question about tagging him, because he is currently there's currently a grievance going on between him and the NFL to be considered a defensive end, and that raises the cap hit on tagging him by about $4 to $6 million, I think, which would make it significantly more difficult for the Giants to do. The Giants are already pretty close against the cap, even after they made 2 or 3 moves today. They cut a couple lower guys and freed up a few $1 million. I think they'll probably sign him long-term and backload the deal. So that's my prediction.
That's interesting you bring that up. So I have Pro Football Focus's Pro Football Reference, stats on Leonard Williams up, and he's on their website. He's listed as a D end in when he was on the Jets, but the 1 year he was on the Giants this last year, he was listed as a D tackle.
I know with the Jets, he played both. They stuck him on the edge and they stuck him interior, and I think last year he was mainly or all interior with the Giants, right? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. They've been playing him at. He's been playing like 3-tech, 5-tech, and so he is on the interior with the system they run. But he filed that grievance last offseason when they initially tagged him, and they hadn't resolved it yet.
Why does he care about what he's designated as?
Because he gets
more money.
He gets paid more. Yeah. The tag is the amount of money on a tag is. Well, I'm going to explain it to you anyway because you didn't seem to know.
Well, I forgot for a brief second.
To the people at home,
I'm going to condescend and patronize you right now. All right. So, it's the tag is tied into certain positions on what the value is. And if you get tagged multiple seasons, it goes up. But you will literally get paid more being tagged as a designated defensive end or edge player than you would as a defensive tackle. So if he's anticipating getting himself tagged, then this is a smart move on his end.
Yeah, what is it? Is it the top 15 average or is it top 5?
I think it's top 15.
Top 15, the average of their salary.
The average of their salaries. Correct. Mm-hmm. And edge players get paid a lot more than defensive tackles unless you're like Aaron Donald. So 2 more players to go over, and they are both Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers, or at least they were, and they're currently about to be free agents.
I feel like we're gonna skip over Kenny Golladay, and he's amazing.
So we don't have to skip over him. I just went off the top 5 based on Greg Rosenthal's rankings.
Well, Greg is an idiot because Kenny Golladay is very good.
Nobody said he's not. He could be the 6th one for all I know, but we can't just list everybody. I'll give you 10 seconds on Kenny Golladay. Will, go.
Kenny Golladay is good, and you should sign him. The end.
Okay, there you go. You heard it from Will first. But there is a wide receiver we're going to talk about right now. Chris Godwin is number 4 on the non-QB free agent list, according to NFL.com. This is one I actually think he does not stay with the Bucs. Between him and the next one on our list, Shaq Barrett, I think it makes more sense to tag Barrett. They have other weapons. Granted, AB is also a free agent, but he lives with Tom. They could probably figure something out.
They'll figure it out.
You still have Mike Evans.
Don't you think AB would be a little cheaper too? Like,
right,
at this
exactly.
Point, so.
And better.
Although it wouldn't surprise me if AB's like, I want a Super Bowl, pay me. Who knows?
No.
You just literally never know what you're going to get. You don't think so?
No.
Well, he caught a touchdown
He
in the
did.
Super
Godwin
Bowl.
didn't. Godwin had like one catch, right? If any.
Godwin's
And-
Godwin's gonna get paid. Let's be honest.
I agree.
Well,
And as
He's
far as
good.
I know, Godwin's not a rapper either.
Godwin-
And AB is, so that's going for him.
Godwin's
AB
not
does have AB has a rapper.
He's not a rapper.
That was last week's flavor, 2 weeks ago flavor of the week. We talked about rap. But yeah, so
Godwin, also of note, Godwin, another Penn Stater.
oh, look at that. Got a few Nittany Lions on here. Let us not
Oh
forget
my
the
God,
Christian
the Giants fan with Penn State.
Christian Hackenberg also went to Penn State, so they're not all winners coming
Who
out
is
of
it?
it.
Well, he's a high school coach.
Is
Who
he
was
really?
that quarterback that went in the NFL? Now he's like the Ravens' third stringer, Trace McSorley.
Trace
Trace
McSorley.
McSorley.
Hey, he came in that one game. Didn't he come in the poop game? He came in the
And he threw
Listen,
a really
did.
long
He got his
a-
first
as a-
touchdown.
As a Florida Gator, I will thank you for Justin Shorter. By the way,
All right, this is not the college football discussion.
it could be.
It could. Maybe we'll do a flavor of the week for you one day. But I agree. I think Godwin gets paid. I don't think it'll be with the Bucs. I think there's a lot of teams that would pay up for a receiver of his talents. Last year, he was one of the top 10 wide receivers in the NFL and fell off a little bit this year as Brady came on and distributed the ball more than Jameis, who just threw to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin
Yeah.
20 times a game. Shaq
yeah.
Barrett. Oh,
Well,
go ahead,
I was
Neil.
going to say, I don't think they have the cap space for Godwin at all, and maybe not even Barrett at this point.
Okay, so let's start with you on that then. You think
Yeah.
that it's possible that both of these guys are on different teams?
Possible. I think one of them, it's more likely that they sign one of them, right? Probably more Barrett, like you were saying. I agree with that. But it is, I think there's a slight chance that they don't sign either of them, and maybe try to go find a veteran presence to replace Barrett or something like that,
Yeah, so Barrett is one season off of being the NFL sack leader in 2019, and obviously we saw what he did in the playoffs. He didn't have as good as a season this year, but he's a force and he can be a game changer. DJ, what are your thoughts on Shaq Barrett and where he might end up?
Yeah, so they definitely, it's hard for them to pay him because they could tag him and then he's up in the air again next year, but also they have to pay him more. On top of that, like you brought up Antonio Brown, they also got to think about the potential of Gronk coming back. He caught a couple touchdowns in the playoffs. Like they have a lot of guys that they're going to have to think about paying, and they're going to have to maneuver the cap very
Cameron
eloquently.
Brate's got great hands. He can catch Lombardi trophies across boat tosses, so,
I'm on a boat.
Yeah. And they still have O.J. Howard there, too.
Yeah,
That's
don't
right.
forget about him, man.
Forgot about O.J. Howard. That's a lot of weapons.
But I mean, Gronk's a Brady guy, so, and he can spike footballs really well.
It's a good thing Gronk didn't catch the Lombardi. He might have spiked the Lombardi trophy right into the water.
That
Okay.
would have been amazing.
Let's move on. We are now going to do our weekly deep dive. This week, as I mentioned, we are doing the New York Giants. We brought on DJ Krause as a Giants fan.
DJ Krause. Sorry.
I don't even know what that means. You just
DJ
you have to
Baby
deal with-
Shark.
Oh, that was supposed to be Baby Shark. That was a horrible Baby Shark impression.
All right.
We are not going to get caught off on Baby Shark right now. Okay, the Giants, the New York Football Giants. I want to start with this. What are your thoughts on the 2020 season? Obviously, you had a chance at the end to possibly make the playoffs, which was insane because you finished with 5 wins. But there were some moments. What were your thoughts on the 2020 season as a whole for the Giants?
Yeah, so you bring up not making the playoffs. Doug Peterson reserved himself a special place in football hell at the end of the season there.
And Nate Sudfeld
but
as well,
as-
maybe.
Yes, yeah. As any Eagles fan would tell me, oh, win more than 6 games. But if they were in the situation we were in and the Giants put in their third string quarterback, Eagles fans would have burned Philadelphia.
I was
to
thinking the
ground.
exact same thing. They would have burned the city to the ground.
So anyway, 6 wins, not great, but better than the past 2 years the Giants have had. I think Joe Judge is the guy. He showed he can coach a team. That team wasn't 6-10 because of the coaching. It was 6-10 because of roster deficiencies. I obviously would have liked to win more than that and actually make a run for the playoffs, but it was definitely an improvement. And I think Joe Judge, as he's getting his guys in there on the roster, is going to do a lot going forward.
I have a question for you. So you like Joe Judge? Do you like Jason Garrett as your offensive coordinator?
That
No,
is a good question.
and outside, Jason Garrett felt like a Dave Gettleman coaching decision and not a Joe Judge coaching decision, whereas guys like our defensive coordinator was great this year and was getting head coach looks. And yeah, so that guy's a Joe Judge guy. I don't think Garrett is. I thought they should have decided to fire Garrett and get a new coach in there. I get Daniel Jones. It would have been his third offensive coordinator in 3 years. But I think you gotta. It doesn't matter how many defensive coordinators or how many offensive coordinators a quarterback gets if all of them suck.
Well, and
Let's back it up a year. I want to ask about because there was talk when Shermer was going to get fired that Gettleman was going to get fired too, and he didn't. And then, of course, you're right. I do think he's the one who was responsible for bringing in Garrett. What are your thoughts on Dave Gettleman?
I very heavily dislike Dave Gettleman.
You sound like you're holding back, like you were trying to be politically correct, which I appreciate.
I feel like I need to be at least a little bit nice because the guy went through cancer in the past year and is a cancer survivor and kept doing his job throughout that. But outside of football wise, I don't like much that he's done with the team. I think they should have done what they did to Tom Coughlin and had him retire in the off season. But obviously that's not what happened. John Mara, the Giants owner, didn't play his hand there. And yeah, so I think to be a successful football team, they need a new GM, or they need to the GM is only there as a show, and Joe Judge is really running the show.
Belichick style.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Gettleman, from an outsider's perspective, seems a lot like sort of our situation in Washington with Bruce Allen, where he just has this chokehold on this franchise and won't let go. And then once he let go, all of a sudden some good things happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And Bruce Allen he survived in that franchise a lot longer than he should have.
So much longer than he should
Yeah,
have.
and look at, like you said, one season with him gone, and you won the division. So
Yeah, look at that.
7-9, but still, there's a lot of promise. We talked about Washington last week. Let's talk about Daniel Jones, DJ. I'm not a Giants fan, but as an NFL fan and somebody I was not a fan of that pick when they chose him, especially that high. What was it, number 6 overall? What are your thoughts on Danny Dimes, though?
I definitely, in the same way, when they first picked him, I was very negative. My friend, who's a Washington fan, called me right when they made that pick. And you can cut this out if you want to, but I told him that I wanted to, and I quote, Plaxico Burress myself in the head.
We're keeping that in. That's not going to get cut out. Those are the kind of quotes we do here at the Pigskin Party Podcast.
But so I was very negative at first. But his first season, he was borderline, I would say, phenomenal. He was one of the most hot and cold quarterbacks. He had a lot of fumbles. decent amount of interceptions, but he threw a lot of touchdowns, made a lot of great throws. I don't think I'll ever forget watching his first game against the Buccaneers and just all of the insanity that transpired. And
I watched that game. That was a great game.
Yeah, the Bucs missed like a 30-yard field goal or something for the Giants to win the game at the end, and like I thought he was going to be able to improve in year 2, but he definitely regressed a significant amount. He dealt with some injuries. He missed a few games, and the Giants had to start Colt McCoy, who actually looked adequate in the offense, strangely enough.
Neil did a little
then,
fist pump for those listening at home.
Colt McCoy's been on the Washington football team for years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Colt McCoy's been in the NFL for years. I feel like he's been in the NFL for like 27 years.
Daniel Jones is like what happens when you pick Josh Allen and it goes the other way.
That's a really great way of describing that.
Am I wrong? Tell me I'm wrong.
No, no, you're 100% right, actually. It's a project player, a development player. One develops beyond anyone's expectations, and the other, at least according to this past season, and I think we're seeing the real Daniel Jones now.
Well, to a certain extent, because at the same time, Josh Allen had all of that improvement after the team added Stephon Diggs, John Brown, Cole Beasley, all of these weapons, and gave him an offensive line, whereas Daniel Jones has never had an offensive line in his career so far. His best wide receiver is Darius Slayton, who was a fifth round pick and has been adequate. Golden Tate has been decent on the field, but not great at all. And he has been an absolute locker room cancer off the field. So Danny Dimes has never had a real weapon.
And Sterling Shepard is more just like a possession slot guy.
I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Evans and Shepard are good. It's just the Giants just.
Well,
yeah, but I that's why I said, like I said earlier, I think they need to go out and get a guy like Allen Robinson, give Daniel Jones somebody to actually throw to who's also going to open up the field for the other receivers. And then see, I mean, I'm not going to say that Daniel Jones' career is done, because I don't think you can say that about anybody after 2 years in the NFL. But they need to do different things than they've been doing to pull out his potential, if his potential is really there.
Well, and I think a big thing is, I mean, we already talked about it, the offensive coordinator change. Josh Allen, for example, is in a offense who plays to his strengths, you know, and I don't think Daniel Jones is at all. But I mean, the stark difference from the first year to the last year. I mean, yeah, he was injured. He had to deal with injury. He didn't have. It's big. I mean, they didn't have Saquon, but you know, to help out on the offense either. So I think
Evan Engram had Butterfingers.
Dude, he was on my fantasy team this year. Oh, pissed me off.
No more drafting Ingram. No, and even if he's dropping, he's always injured.
You picking Evan Engram is like you, like drafting somebody for their talent, but not their actual production. It's like the idea of Evan Engram, not actually Evan Engram.
I like the idea of
missing out on the first. Yeah, that's missing out on the first tier of tight ends, and then you pick a guy because you think he has potential.
He's also like the $5,000 tight end on FanDuel, where you're like, nah, he might catch a touchdown. He never does.
Well, he's also if interceptions counted against receivers, he would have the most receiver interceptions.
I believe it. But
so let's talk
I
about.
just want to bring up something real quick about
Neil.
Daniel Jones. I kind of agree with DJ is that it's a little too early to give up on him. I think the first year showed good, last year not so much, and so if they put some more weapons together, and I think it's enough to invest a little more, maybe 2 more years into him to see how much it is, because their other options aren't so good either.
That's true. I do agree that there's no need to cut bait. You've seen enough to show to flashes to give him at least another year with some weapons. So let's talk about you've said that you want to target Allen Robinson in free agency. What about the draft? So the Giants are picking at number 11. Is there any particular player or just position in general that you'd like to see New York target early in the draft?
Yeah, so if one of the three big receivers, Chase, Waddle, or Smith, fell to 11, I think that's a very strong uh, pick there. Even if they sign a guy like Allen Robinson or Chris Godwin or Kenny Galladay, one of the big receivers, I think drafting another guy on top of that would be pretty huge for them. The talk is always going to be around whether they pick an offensive lineman. Gettleman's a huge offensive line guy. No matter how many linemen they draft, they could always draft another one. I think that's not as strong. Um, there's the potential of Micah Parsons, linebacker, Penn State. He was a guy who was looking like a top 5 pick and then had some character concerns come up, but is a guy that I think could fall to the Giants at 11, and Joe Judge would be the guy to coach somebody with character concerns and be able to deal with that. I think
Joe
the Giants,
Judge would be the judge of his character.
Oh, don't. No.
I'm gonna give myself a
No,
pat on the
just
back.
don't.
Are there two Wills tonight, or
I am trying to be more Will-like tonight. I don't know
Yeah.
what it is, what I ate today.
but
Throwing out the zingers.
yeah, I've also seen some mock drafts with guys like Gregory Rousseau, yeah,
Out of Miami.
from Miami, or Quiddy. I forget how exactly his name is spelled. Another edge rusher. That's Quiddy Paye. Another edge rusher. So edge rusher would be is a pretty big area of need too. They fell off near the end of the season a lot because they had injuries in their pass rushers and their outside linebackers. They lost Kyler Fackrell and a couple other guys, and they ended up playing David Mayo, who is a middle linebacker at edge, which is never something you want to see happen.
That's when you're throwing in the towel. You're like, who do we got though? That guy has LB in his tight. Let's just throw him out there.
that's pretty crazy.
So let's get some closing thoughts from you, DJ. Are you optimistic for next season? I mean, it's the off season. Everybody's optimistic, but where do you think the Giants go from here?
Yeah, I want to be optimistic. I think having Joe Judge for a second year, I think every player who stays around is going to improve. I think depending on how they navigate the rest of free agency, whatever they decide to do with Nate Solder, and there's been talks about trading or cutting Kevin Zeitler, which would free up a lot of cap room, both of those. So depending on how they navigate the cap and how they would use that potential cap room, I could see good things happening in the future. But at the same time, keeping Dave Gettleman, especially after firing Shermer, is a questionable move at best, and a horrible move probably in reality. And so that gives me a lot of pause on any optimism I have about the team.
Fair enough. I like it. You're realistic. You know, most fans in the offseason are like, oh, we're going to be the best. We're going to win the division. You're like, nah, I don't. I'd like to. I'm not so sure.
I mean, there's hope with the East being as bad as it is, but
There you go. that opens the door for anybody. We could see Jalen Hurts leading the 6-10 Eagles to a
and
division.
no
I
team
don't
has
know.
won 2 years in a row for like over a decade, almost 2 decades.
We're changing that this year, baby.
So,
There you go. Well, DJ, I wish your Giants the best of luck. Let's go ahead and wrap up the main NFL episode. Please subscribe wherever you're listening. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and leave your comments below. Will's comments weren't that bad this week, so maybe we'll get more followers. You never know.
Not as big
we
of
now have our
a
own
drop
Patreon.
off for
Can we have
subscribers this week.
Can we
Not
have
as big as a
Saquon?
drop off. That's right.
Can we have Saquon? Please just give us Saquon. He's very good.
I mean, I don't know.
Can you?
Yes, I knew you were going to ask that. I knew. I don't care.
You don't have
I
a
don't
team.
know.
It's like, what do you mean? Who's we? You're
Wait,
giving us
do we,
some-
I don't think we. Was he going to be the same? Like,
Fun fact, I played a game against Saquon in high school. He played in my district, and I played a game against
Okay.
him.
I've been in
you were
the
left
same
tackle?
stadium with Tim Tebow. You know what?
And
you know
and
what's a fun
70,000 other
fact
people?
is the guy that I just recently switched jobs in December to move down here to Florida. My old boss's kid played with Russell Wilson in school and picked him off as a safety. That's like claim to
that's
fame,
cool.
right?
It's one thing.
Yeah.
That is a claim to fame. I hope he saved that ball. Not that he did.
How would
but
you
yeah.
save that ball? It's
all
like,
right.
oh, I just picked off some random kid. I'm taking this
I
ball
know.
home with me.
I corrected myself. I'm like, wait, he didn't know it. Maybe he was.
I got to get my
prescient
high
and
school
had
story
good
in.
predict the future.
I walked. I
Okay.
didn't play high school football, but I walked past Jonathan Allen when he played my high school's team.
Ah,
There you go.
nice. My brother handed off to Jonathan Beeson. So Jonathan Beeson played running back and linebacker at my high school. My brother was the quarterback, so he got to hand off to future NFL linebacker
you
John
go.
Who
Beeson.
the hell is John Beeson?
He
played
played
on
for the
Giants.
Panthers.
And
Yeah, he played for the Giants
actually.
too. Yeah. That's
He was hurt every
This is an
year.
NFL podcast. Will doesn't know guys who started
John
in the NFL
Beeson.
for 10 years.
All right,
So,
sure. All right.
Yeah. all right. Look it up. All right, let's wrap it up there. You can find us on social media on Twitter at official PP Pod.
don't know why you did
Find
that.
us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and make sure to join our Discord community. That plus the Patreon links will be in the episode description. Make sure to stick around for the flavor of the week because, as I said, it will be NFL centric again. So stick around for the flavor of the week. We'll see you later.